chance to hear it, so let her tell it. People on the streets say Sabrina speaks. Tune into the show, she will let you know. Tell all your friends and family. Real talk is no joke. You get the news straight up from grassroots and concerns. You need to hear with some people gone. So tell all your friends to tune in to
Good
the
evening,
show.
Cayman. I'm Sabrina Turner, and welcome to Sabrina Speaks, your daily dose of clarity, truth, and community insights. Every weekday from 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're tackling the issues that affect you, from national headlines to grassroots concerns. Whether you're in traffic or winding down your day, this is your chance to hear it straight and speak your truth. So buckle up, Cayman. We're not holding back.
This is the show. We gotta let you know. Now we got to go.
And now here's Sabrina.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome one and all. Good evening, Cayman Islands, and to definitely our family near and far. It is good to be back with you this evening. Welcome to another episode, yes, of Sabrina Speaks, Voices of the Islands, Conversations for the World, and the podcast where voices rise, stories unfold, and inspiration takes center stage. I'm Sabrina, and it's good to be back with you today. And on this eve of the fourth sitting of the 2025-2026 Parliament, yeah, that kicks off tomorrow at 2 p.m. And I'm wondering how much of you will actually tune in live or decide to watch it afterwards. Maybe you're like my friend, some of my friends, Connie Bonnie, who's in the house, who waters her orchids, or maybe you're Marshall, who has us always piped and always definitely locked in while he is on the job, but never misses a beat. Or maybe you're Jimbo, who plays it in the background. Look, whatever you do, maybe playing it in the background, doing some housework. The key is many of you are now watching. Thank God, because I have seen and noticed an increase in the engagement of these live parliamentary briefings. Congratulations to all of you. And that's a positive sign. So whether or not you intend to deal with your plants or cook or do some housework, that's all right. That's all right. You're still locked in. But definitely, it definitely paves a way into today's discussion and overall topic. And I want you all to join in the discussion with me this evening. I would really, yes, I do. That's what happens when you're almost a year in and you get to learn people. But definitely here in the Cayman Islands, dominoes tables here recently, and I must say it has been going on from the holidays. Conversations around the domino tables, yes, are loud. Even in some living rooms and family rooms are loud. Some WhatsApp chats too are loud. But the country is quiet. The frustration is real, and the silence is even louder. And Caymanians are watching major changes unfold, yet only a few are speaking publicly. So this evening on Sabrina Speaks, we asked the question, why? What are we afraid of? And what does this silence mean for our democracy? We're talking about the Caymanian habit of staying quiet, even when the stakes are high. Speaking to some people today, I got a sense of, and I quote, "I'm a bit disappointed," end quote. But disappointment in leadership is being voiced. Some, not all, but a good majority. Cultural pressures as well, as families struggle to keep up with rent, utilities, groceries, and everything else. Cayman, and I'm inviting you to join me today, please, as you always do. But we want to hear from you. Be a part of the conversation as we confront the quiet storm brewing in our islands. It's not about blame. This is about understanding ourselves as people. 345-936-8255 is the number to call to be a part of this conversation. This evening, feel free to WhatsApp me or comment on whatever platform you're streaming us live on today. I will definitely read your comments, and I ask you to remain respectful of, because everybody's voices matter, but be respectful and you will have no problem with me. But again, you can also call in by WhatsApp or straight. That's 345-936-8255 to join in this conversation, because you are the bedrock of our existence. You chart the course, but not only that, your voice matters. There's a public appeal out to get public feedback. And thank you for choosing this space. Thank you for joining me every Monday to Friday from 5 until 7 as we keep it real, have some thought-provoking, respectful, civic education dialogue as we continue to learn and grow in this space. But the content you're about to hear, including any discussions or opinions from myself, guests, and or participants, is intended solely for general informational and entertainment purposes. It's not a substitute for professional legal, medical, or financial advice. I encourage you to consult with a qualified professional for specific concerns. Bridge Media Limited and all its affiliates disclaims all liability for any decisions or actions taken in reliance on the information presented. Before going into the substantive topic, you know how it rolls. Welcome, welcome, one and all. I see you rolling in. Please remember, don't forget to share and subscribe, and also forward it to a friend so you don't miss an episode. Don't miss a beat. But compliments of our friends over there, the Cayman Islands National Weather Service. Here's the weather forecast for this evening and into tomorrow. The synopsis calls for moderate winds and seas that are expected across the Northwest Caribbean through Wednesday, with a few sporadic showers as a ridge of high pressure dominates the weather pattern. Satellite imagery shows few clouds over the Cayman area. Forecast for tonight calls for partly cloudy skies with a 30% chance of showers. Temperatures will fall to the mid-70s. Winds will be northeast 10 to 15 knots with higher gusts. Seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. Tomorrow, the forecast calls for partly cloudy skies with a 30% chance of morning showers. Temperatures will rise to the mid-80s. Winds will be northeast 10 to 15 knots. Seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. There'll be a high tide this evening at 3:55. Tomorrow, a low tide at 3:53 and another high at 9:53 a.m. tomorrow morning. The sun will set this evening at 6:30 and sun will rise tomorrow morning at 6:43. Now, the outlook is calling for an increase in the chance of thunderstorms from Thursday as an upper level trough moves across the Northwest Caribbean. We want to thank our friends over there at the Cayman National Weather Service. So now you can definitely plan your day. Now let's take a look at what's making headline news, not only locally, Caribbean, and internationally, making Sabrina Speaks headlines and newsworthiness for today. Right here at home, police have arrested 36-year-old Derek Osney Bushy Bush, the West Bay man who had been wanted since November for failing to appear in court on charges related to a serious assault and other offenses. According to the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, officers carried out a search operation at a residence in West Bay on Saturday, the 28th of February, where Bush was located and taken into custody. He remains detained as investigations continue. Bush has been the subject of the public appeal for months, with police urging the community not to approach him, but report any sightings. In other news making headlines today, the Cayman Islands Customs and Border Control Services has confirmed 8 migrants arriving in Cayman Brac around 7 p.m. yesterday, March 2nd. According to officials, the group consisting of 3 women and 5 men landed by vessel in the Spot Bay Cove area. CBC officers, supported by partner agencies, responded under established security protocols. The migrants have been secured and are now being processed in accordance with Cayman Islands law and international obligations. Government officials say they continue to monitor regional developments that may influence irregular migration, and the public is encouraged to report any related information to 911. In other news making local headlines today, John Gray High School's newly expanded security camera system helped staff quickly identify a disciplinary incident involving several students last week. According to the Department of Education Services, school leaders detected the matter during a routine monitoring and responded immediately. The students were placed on short-term suspension and have since returned to class. Meetings with parents and guardians have been arranged, and the students will take part in small group counseling as part of a wider support plan. DES Director Mark Ray says the department remains committed to strengthening supervision, preventative education, and overall school safety. And in more local news, the Cayman Islands Fire Service is honoring pump engineer Kirk Richard Pascal as an extraordinary 35 years of dedicated service to our islands. Throughout his career, Mr. Pascal has embodied courage, integrity, and unwavering commitment to public safety. His quiet strength and steady professionalism have protected our communities for more than 3 decades, earning the respect of his colleagues and the gratitude of the Caymanian people. Honorable Minister Nicholas DaCosta has stated it was a privilege to celebrate a man whose service has touched countless lives. We extend our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Pascal and wish him a healthy, fulfilling, and well-earned retirement. Congratulations to you and all the best. You're probably going to be busier now, but thank you from all of us here at Sabrina Speaks for your service. Now let's turning our attention across the Caribbean this evening. Governments and agencies are responding to economic, environmental, and security developments shaping the region. And here are some top stories that qualified for today's newsworthy in our region. Jamaicans traveling to the United Kingdom will now use fully digital visa system as the United Kingdom government officially replaces visa stickers with electronic e-visas. The change took effect on February 25th as part of the United Kingdom's push to modernize and strengthen its border controls. Now, approved visas are now digitally linked to travelers' passport and managed online through a UK visa and immigration account. British High Commissioner Alicia Herbert is urging travelers to familiarize themselves with the new system before booking trips. Dual Jamaican British nationalities must also enter the UK on a valid British passport or risk being denied boarding. In more Caribbean news, the Caribbean Development Bank says economic growth across the region will remain modest this year. Excluding Guyana, regional GDP is projected to rise by 1.1%, reflecting ongoing challenges such as high import costs and climate-related vulnerabilities. However, Guyana's rapid expanding oil sector is expected to lift overall Caribbean growth to 6.2% when included. The CDB says countries must continue strengthening fiscal management and investing in climate resilience to maintain stability. Suriname is positioning itself as a rising energy power and prepares to host the Caribbean Energy Week 2026 from March 30th to April 1st. Oil Minister Patrick Brunnings will deliver a keynote address outlining major upstream expansions tied to new offshore discoveries. The Guyana-Suriname Basin continues to attract global interest with deep water projects such as Total Energy's Grand Murgu development expected to deliver first oil by 2028. Now, officials say Suriname aims to boost national revenue while advancing regional energy cooperation. And the Caribbean nations are gearing up for the annual Carib Wave 2026 tsunami preparedness exercise that is scheduled for March 19th. Coordinated by UNESCO International Oceanographic Commission, The drill will test early warning system evacuation procedures and communication networks across the region. With more than 70% of Caribbean residents living near the coast, officials say the exercise is critical for strengthening disaster readiness and coastal resilience. That closes out our Caribbean region, but we can't leave out international. Let's see what's making international. The conflict involving the United States, Israel, and Iran continues to intensify with reports of widespread strikes and rising casualties. Nearly 800 people have been killed in Iran following the United States-Israel attacks, according to the Iranian Red Cross Crescent. Now, satellite images show significant damage to military and government facilities in Tehran, while Iran has launched ballistic missiles towards Cyprus, both intercepted before impact. Regional tensions remain high as global pressures accesses next step. The United States says it may deploy the Navy to escort commercial oil tankers through the strait if necessary. President Donald Trump stated that Iran's naval and radar capabilities have been severely damaged, raising concerns about the security of one of the world's most critical oil shipping routes. The strait handles nearly 20% of global oil traffic, making stability in the region vital for global markets. Oil prices have surged around $82 per barrel as markets react to the widening conflict in the Middle East, and an analysis warned that prolonged instability could trigger further oil spikes, affecting fuel costs worldwide and placing additional pressure on global oil change. And last but not least, the United States has temporarily closed 3 embassies in the Middle East following drone attacks linked to Iran conflict. Now, officials say the closures are precautionary as intelligence agencies assesses ongoing threats, and the moves underscore growing concerns about the safety of diplomatic personnel in the region. That wraps it up this evening, and I'm hoping that you're actually finding these new headlines very informative yet connective, because no matter what, we're all connected some way, somehow, and because we're voices of the island's conversations to the world, why not just keep it real? It's good to be here with you this evening. Welcome, welcome, one and all. Happy birthday to anybody who is celebrating a birthday today, anniversary, or just celebrating life. Yes, we celebrate it with you here from all of us, the Sabrina Speaks family. Happy whatever it is you're celebrating. Connie Bonnie's in the house, and she's cheers to Jim. Don, good evening to you. How are you, my love? Yes, I know you well. I know you. You'll have it playing in the background, out watering, doing housework, doing something, because you can't keep still. Hey, Andrew, welcome, welcome. Hey, Sinclair. Hi, it's good to have you. Damien's in the house. How you doing? I want to hear what you guys say about this one. Why they keep quiet? I want to hear from all of you this evening, because this is who we are as a people. And it was sparked. I'll get into that. What sparked today's topic was from a statement that was made yesterday. And you could hear the question actually in the voice. Miss Dorothy is here. It's so good to have you with us. And Marshall, definitely. Yep, you got us plugged in. Hard at work, I'm sure, and weathering the cold. Don't grudge you at all. I'm happy. That's the aim, Connie. We will continue to be louder. Yes, yes, yes. Jimbo is in the house. Oh, thank you so much. Hello, Sabrina. Looking good there, lady. The style suits you well. And Connie, I'm sure eyes are on you too. And all others, wagwan. Jim, I would love to hear you say that. That is so funny. That's why I love you all. You know, I just really, really love you guys. I love the spirit. Oh, you're picking gungo peas now? Oi, nice, nice, nice. Some good fresh coconut milk. And girl, or you do peas, gungo peas soup with little spinners. Yeah, they're good. But you hear Jim now? You hear Jim. It's so good to have you all here. And again, we just love the engagement. I love the back and forth. But you know, there are some things that are going on in the community that we got to keep you abreast with as well. I'll just keep this very brief, but just a gentle reminder for you. Yeah, soup. Good. Spinach, good. Some yellow heart breadfruit. Ooh. I digress. Let's get back to the stuff so you won't miss anything. Yes, the fourth meeting tomorrow of the 2025-2026 session of Parliament. That takes place tomorrow at 2. You can log on to get it real on your CIG YouTube channels or at cable, CIG TV cable, so that you can get it in real time. Or you can always go back and watch it afterwards if you're actually picking up the kids from school. But if you're fortunate enough to be working home and you can play YouTube, by all means, let's get it live. Let's get it direct. I will 2:00. We start at 5. Maybe I could catch the first couple of hours and just give a quick synopsis of what I caught. But, I'm content creating as well. So I'll be like a Connie doing my stuff and having it played in the background as well. So yes, that's happening tomorrow. And also there's a reminder that the People's Progressive Movement listening tour is scheduled to begin tonight at Constitutional Hall right there next to the Parliament building in Georgetown. Now, this notice has been published for public awareness. So it starts at 6:00 this evening, goes until 8. So it's out there as a gentle reminder for you that's taking place this evening as well. And also all their stuff that's happening in the community. The DOE go live with the DOE Shark Research Team. They're going to be over there in Cayman Brac this weekend. And you're invited to come out and learn about this whole shark logger network. The DOE is the DOE Citizen Science Program and how you can play a role in breaking shark research. Now, everyone is welcome. Just reserve your spot with the Brac Scuba Shack at info@bracscubashack.com. So you can zoom in on the screen if you want to see it, or you can just log on. That is there for you to take advantage of. But for all of you in the Brac who want to go to take advantage of that is taking place, over there. So it's not just here that things are going on at all. And, we got to actually do this. Yes. I want to share with you a reminder that the celebration for the life of Evangelist Alexander and Serena takes place tomorrow, Wednesday, March 4th at 5:30 on the Kempton Seafire Beach Deck at 60, that's Tanger Way. Now, this gathering also marks the start of the National Week of Evangelism running March 4th through March 10th. And all are welcome to attend and take part in the activities through the week at ignitefire.ky. So everyone knows this family, how they actually started that. And unfortunately, they lost their life tragically trying to help people in the aftermath of Melissa taking goods over there to Jamaica. So that's what's making our community headlines this evening. And I invite you all to get involved. Just like how we're telling you to speak up. Annie is in the house. Yes. Clean and straight. You're also here. Good evening to you all and welcome. Yeah. Yesterday, to be honest, a caller asked a question. One of the commenters and callers, just let me remove this, was the question that they asked has been weighed heavy on my spirit. Hence today, the topic came up. Thank you so much, Anne. Big up to Slay, all of the girls there, Petula and Carol at Slay Beauty Bar. That's out there next to High Tech in the little plaza by ITC. Yeah. Oh, Lord, what a journey. Ooh, it's long. But you know what? When you want something to end up looking good, you got to give the sacrifice. Yes. But thank you to Petula and definitely to Carol. Big up to Slay Crew, my family over there. And thank you for the kind compliments. It's a change. You're going to have to put up with me now for at least 5 months because I ain't sitting down for almost 12 hours to get rid of this in 4 to 6 weeks. Oh, no. So your girl's going to get her money's worth. Kudos to them. Yeah. But thank you so much. It's a boho with, all you ladies will understand, but we're all about sharing and we empower somebody. And I don't know, somebody may be wondering whether or not they could rock this color or whatever. Hey, you got to try it. Busting loose. Be happy with you. Embrace who you are. And yes, I'm stepping out slowly but surely, but doing it respectfully. But thank you for all your feedback. Don't make anybody define you. Just go with it. Whatever you choose makes you happy. Thank you so much. Sharing the love. But I got to give compliments to Petula and Carol at Slay Beauty Bar. So yeah, going back to what I was saying in regards to what sparked today's topic instead of dissecting, but by all means, should anyone want to ask about the upcoming bills you saw this morning on Sandra's show, The Cold Hard Truth, she interviewed the Honorable Premier, who was actually breaking down from his perspective and explaining the urgent and the wave of the 28-day public consultation can be justified under the Constitution of 77 subsection 2, and stating that, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting, pretty much that the long-term benefits of waiving these, for what good these amendments would make, especially the one for health insurance, and which we covered yesterday, of these medical indigent persons, defining that under law and giving the Minister of Health that more responsibilities, is one that the public eventually, it's a part of a bigger plan. And if one piece of legislation that requires amendment going to impact other legislation, might as well you just do it in small steps. And eventually in the big picture, it would all make sense. You have to go back, if you didn't watch CMR this morning, to hear exactly what he had to say in regards to his justification and exactly what some of these amendments meant. Now, what caught my attention is that his breakdown in regards to a question that was posed for those persons being born 1977 and earlier that were claimed automatic. There was a specific question that was asked whether or not that would cover those Caymanians that were classified or categorized themselves as ghost Caymanians. And the answer was no. Because it goes beyond that. But the answer was no. That's a different category of people. So, not to take away from it, but the mere fact that that answered that question, but yet that substantive piece of legislation automatically making these persons become one of at least 4 different sets of people, become Caymanians, but still that is not the set of people that were deemed ghost Caymanians. They're another set. It begs to then question how much sets will automatically almost open the door to be deemed as Caymanians. I can't say that I heard him actually explain, maybe that's going to be saved for tomorrow, that it gives any assurance of the true numbers of these persons that would be deemed automatically Caymanians, bearing in mind before they had to apply, but based on what is in the bill and what is being presented, once you provide the documents that actually covers you under that section, you're automatically deemed Caymanians. That means right to vote, right to sit as jury, right to access all government services, including Cynical, DAF assistance as well. We don't know. But if you're Caymanian, I'm quite sure that would include all the benefits that comes with it. And if that confirming that they're just another section of people, but it's still not the group that is considered ghost Caymanians, then it even brings more questions as to what came out of our discussions here, saying we need more explanations as to how far will this go? What will be the benefits in regards or extended to them, whether or not it will go generations to generation. Now, I stand to be corrected. But maybe, you know what? This is the eve of that. Maybe when these bills are tabled before the Parliament, that without questions being posed, possibly if the respective ministers are listening to the platforms in preparation for their speeches, they would actually cover this succinctly to answer some of these questions and concerns in the delivery of their speaking notes before then it's open on the floor of Parliament for open discussion. There have been a lot of questions. The mere fact that the consultation period has been contracted and has been waived because it's a matter of urgency and it's one of the greater good and it wouldn't cause no much damage based on what all of them are saying. And that was another takeaway from the Honorable Premier, who made it quite clear that it is not he that is in isolation in saying, I'm going to do this waiver and we're going to fast track these bills without public consultation. He was quite clear that it didn't born just on him. The respective minister or ministers in consultation with him brings it to his attention. They all meet as a caucus, and then he has to ponder over whether or not he's going to, because of how the Constitution is worded, how it works, he is the one who actually has to make the declaration. So the onus is on that person in the role. But even though the Constitution says that, what he was trying to convey is that he doesn't just arbitrarily says, I'm going to waive this, I'm going to waive that, and just do it, not leaving you in the loop or be able to ask of more questions. That's not done in isolation, is what I got from his response. Again, this is why civic education is imperative. It's imperative. Some may see it as, cop out, now that there's a lot of discussions, some that are very vocal, some that are loud, a lot that probably are private phone calls, but you have to maintain a level of diplomacy in those roles. Some will say, well, look, he's just making it clear, I didn't do this on my own. That it is consensus of everyone that's sitting around the table that has made this happen. So again, as we continue to educate and inform appearances like himself, that comes without, of course, sharing confidential information. We all learn together, but if you don't understand the processes, I felt it was a good way of him objectively sharing how he came to this decision. Wasn't that he was the big bad wolf, the dictatorship that says, look, we're going to do this now. We don't care what other people say. We're going to do this. No, I think he tried his best to explain how he got to the point. And I think bottom line is, not speaking on his behalf, but my takeaway was, with all good intentions, the public will thank us when they see, if this is passed, the benefits of it. So all I can say, good to him, good for him for scratching the surface on civic education, getting it out there, but we have to continue at it. And I felt that it was good for him to actually do that in the way that he, despite his diplomatic mannerism. Good evening, caller. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Good evening, Sabrina, and good evening to the, call them the Sabrina Speaks community. I think that's the way I'd love to call it.
Thank you.
So now, two things I really want to speak to you about, if I can. The first one is like a composite number of things, which is what you've already started talking about. In fact, I was going to call you about that anyway. I was just waiting to see what the subject matter was. Lucky enough, you are on the subject
We're
matter.
on the subject, yeah, so you're in line.
Yeah, thanks very much. And then the other thing I want to talk about is a case of mine which is coming up. I'll discuss that second because it's not as important as the first issue. You see, I watched that interview with Sandra. I didn't watch it live. I had to go back to it and watch it, about 2-3 hours ago. And I found that very, very disappointing. So I'd like to address some of the issues you started addressing. Now, there is this issue that there is need to give, the Constitution requires that a 28 days notice be given, or rather that the bill should be published at least 28 days before it is introduced, meaning before it is introduced. You will understand that before it is introduced, meaning before first reading of it.
Yeah.
And under the old section 77.2, I'll read it because it's very brief. 77.2 of the old Constitution before they amended it in 2020, it says, Standing orders shall require that, except in case of emergency, every bill introduced by the government shall be published at least 21 days before the commencement of the meeting at which it is scheduled to be introduced. By published, it means published in the Gazette. It doesn't say so in the Constitution, but that's what it means. In legislative terms, once you say you are publishing a bill, it means you are publishing it in the Gazette. So under the old provision, it was 21 days, that's the first thing. And it said, except in case of emergency. But it didn't say who decides whether there is an emergency. So now, by default, it means that Parliament itself would have to say, like when the minister introduces it, they will have to say, well, I'm introducing this bill, but it is not 21 days since it was published. But I'm moving a motion for it to be heard or to be debated in under 21 days. And then the Parliament would say whether they passed the motion or not. Okay? But the new one has changed that now. One, of course, it's now 28 days, but it is also, and this is the thing he was trying to explain, and I think you also touched on it in your introduction. The new one, 77.2, says, every bill shall be published in a government notice, and Parliament shall not proceed upon any bill until expiration of 28 days after the date on which the bill was so published, unless the Premier certifies by writing under his or her hand that consideration of the bill is too urgent to permit such a delay. So under the new one, in addition to the period now being 28 days, now it says that it is the Premier who should state whether he considers it to be urgent.
Correct. It's explicitly clear.
Yeah, it's clear who determines whether it is urgent. But you see, the problem with that is that it doesn't define an emergency. Now, I know what he said. He said, well, I just don't get up and say this is an emergency. I think about it very carefully. But to tell you the very truth, I don't care whether you think about it 20 times or 100 times. You have to be accountable as far as why you consider it to be urgent. Now, another way to ask the question is, wasn't this purely because you were sloppy in the way you did the first bill and now you are cleaning it up? But does that make it an emergency? Now, you will find that there are certain countries where they tell you straight away that if you are just trying to correct a mistake that was made, that is not an emergency. So in other words, you can define an emergency in a positive way, like it's an emergency if something like COVID comes up or the stock market collapses or something like that. And then you could go also further to say what is not an emergency as well. Okay, now in my view, this was not an emergency. Why? Because there was nothing that was unforeseen. Even, in court, when you go there and you say this is an emergency, it must be something which was unforeseen. COVID was unforeseen. The collapse of the market was unforeseen. Some effects of a war that has just started, if there are any effects, that is unforeseen. That's the class of things you would say are an emergency. So what I would criticize this new provision is, one, it basically doesn't also define what an emergency is and is not. So as a result, it is likely to be used for political purposes, sometimes just to bring in something quickly. He certifies it's an emergency, but actually they might want simply that the matter should not be discussed, in great detail. Now, I'm not ascribing an ulterior motive.
Right.
Yeah, but you see, these are the dangers when you are writing legislation because they can be used. By the way, that's why I don't even like to digress very quickly. I don't like this British system where a prime minister can call an election, an early election or not, because a snap election, because it is used for political purposes. But that's a discussion for another day. So now the other criticism about this, apart from the fact that the emergency is not defined, the other one is that it says that the Premier has to determine. What if you disagree with the Premier? What is Parliament supposed to do? This doesn't give you any guidance. Can you go behind what the Premier has done and the debate why he declared it to be an emergency, it hasn't been tested. But in my view, again, by default, you can say that Parliament can question this.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, there's nothing in here that gives Parliament any kind of power to be able to say this won't be debated because it's not an emergency, because there's nothing in here which suggests that you can challenge that. So they've given too much power, in my view, to the Premier. But anyway, the answer to this is to amend the Constitution or the standing orders to define what is and is not an emergency. Let me give you one practical case I had to deal with. There was one time, I won't tell you the particular piece of legislation because I'm still bound by government secrecy.
Right.
There was a certain piece of legislation which was supposed to be done, and the OECD wanted it done by a certain date. They gave it to a drafter who is no longer in the department there now. She kept it for something like 9 months. She didn't do it. And then when they came to visit, they said, well, you haven't done this. This is one of the pieces of legislation you should have done. And my boss came to me then on one afternoon saying, can you have it done by tomorrow morning? Now, I told her, I said, really, the person who delayed is the one who should do it. But since the request is from you, I will do it. So I did that bill. It was ready the next day, and in the next few days, they brought it into Parliament. And I remember that time, Miss Julie was in opposition. She said, what is the emergency here? Again, technically, that was not an emergency because somebody was just sitting on it. Okay? That's not an emergency. But again, they used the numbers to railroad the rest of the House, and they passed it. So, upshot of all this discussion, there must be better accountability, and that accountability will begin with amending this and defining what an emergency is, and to make it clear that Parliament can question and maybe even overrule the Premier. That's what I would suggest. Now, he also spoke, the Premier, about the validation of the fees.
Yes, that it has been overlooked for, yes, thank you for thinking, and he just want to get it done, and that it would be a position where all of these refunds and all that sort of stuff. Give us your takeaway on that. Your synopsis.
Yes, you see, Sandra asked a very good question, said, how long have these fees been collected without a legal authority? If I heard him correctly, he wasn't I think he said years, and that's all. He didn't explain in detail. He said years. Now, that's my suspicion as well, that this has been done for years. Now, if it was being done for years, this is very, very sloppy, Sabrina. Now, something that any senior government official should understand is that you do not collect money from people, whether they are in the way of fees or taxes or whatever it is, without legislation. These are things which in England, they caused a revolution to a point where they said only government can impose taxes. And then later on, as the concepts were being refined, they said, okay, but ministers can make regulations regarding fees. What is the difference between fees and taxes? Fees are things that you pay and which are roughly commensurate to the services you're getting. For example, you go and get a birth certificate. I don't know how much a birth certificate costs at Cayman, but
$10.
Exactly. Why? Because that's about how much it costs to prepare it. If a government was to say, okay, a birth certificate will cost you $1,000, you probably can go to court and say that this is not a fee. Effectively, this is a tax. And because it is a tax, it can only be imposed by Parliament. And there's a lot of case law on this. There are some countries where some fees have been disallowed on the basis that they were in effect taxes because they were not commensurate to the service, and therefore they should have gone to Parliament. But the point I'm trying to make regarding this is that anybody who is senior in government, chief officer, deputy chief officer, ministers, or policy officers, accountants, you name them, lawyers, whether they're drafters or not, they should know that you can't collect money without legislation. And for this to have happened, it is really sloppy. And I'll tell you how I think it happened. I don't have any inside knowledge. I suspect somebody challenged it.
Well,
And
I
then after
kind
they
of got
challenged
that
it,
from where he was very careful. He was very
cagey.
cautious with
Yeah.
how he stepped around, giving information again that drew it to the forefront as to why it would be deemed an emergency now. So, not emergency, but one of the things that is encompassing the emergency clause that he's pulled. But I got that he was being very careful around the true reason behind why they were explicitly clear in those amendments to actually correct this unfortunate situation.
Yeah, it is, to me, it is sloppy. If this has been going on for years, which is what I suspect has been the case.
That begs the question. Unless you are really put yourself in my position now.
Okay.
We're talking about a minister, former minister of health. But let's say I was the former minister of immigration or customs, wherever that particular legislation lies. And it is not something that has been brought to my attention by either those until, let's say hypothetically, we see an increasing number of challenges coming and it was brought to our attention. It's not about pointing the finger at or who's to blame. But what it says is that you're in isolation when you're sitting as a cabinet minister because you're dealing with legislation and policies that is really within your remit. You understand what I'm saying? But it also helps when a minister sometimes out of curiosity picks up certain legislations and regulations to also see it from a different perspective. I could be honest with you, sir. Not all the time you have that amount of time on your hand to go through it because you have a dedicated, learned team supporting you behind the scenes. You understand? But accountability still lies, from what I'm seeing now, thank you, Denver, in those ministers for really picking up the laws and regulations and familiarizing yourself, because it's amazing what you can possibly find out for yourself. You are constitutionally responsible for the budget. In that role as a minister, I'm almost embarrassed. But then how far do you take it? Because I was once, unfortunately, unfortunately, because something may have been overlooked. But if you think anything of yourself during your tenure, I would feel bad that I didn't know that as a minister.
Yeah, as for this kind of thing, I don't blame the minister very much, if at all. Okay. Because as a minister, you come in and you are in charge of policy, and they'll come to the meeting and they'll say, okay, fine. You might say, okay, we need to raise some money, and then how much money do we have? And then you ask your technical people, they tell you, okay, we collect so much in fees and so on. Yeah. When they tell you that we collect so much in fees, you are not likely to say, do we have legal authority to collect the fees?
Correct. You're not going to, that's the furthest thing away from your mind. Because the mere fact, remember, the separation of operational powers and you staying in your lane, that sort of stuff. But if they've been collecting these fees for years, coming in at 2025, that's going to be the last thing on your mind.
No,
are you doing this? Are you doing this legally? So it's interesting.
Yeah, no. As a minister, really, no. It is the technical people in there who is collecting this. And when they collect it, what is the practice? Like, for example, if a chief officer gets up and says, Mr. Customs Controller, can you collect money and so forth? And the first thing that the person is supposed to say, do we have legal authority? It is as simple as that. Do we have legal authority? Because even an internal auditor who looks at the authority for doing certain things should have picked that up a long time ago. Many years when I was in the BVI, I might have mentioned on a previous show, they were charging about $1 or $2 for importation of an animal. And a TV talk show host challenged that and said, where's the legal authority for this?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, first of all, they began saying they didn't need legal authority. Then they went to the Attorney General. The Attorney General says, no, you need legal authority, and not just legal authority, but legislative authority.
Mm-hmm.
And then the matter went to court. They lost the court case. I remember when this talk show host came to my office, he even came with a newspaper cutting to show how, he had won the case and all that. So to me, this is a very basic government. And I'm surprised that even the Auditor General at some point didn't pick this up, because even the Auditor General, you see, the Auditor General is supposed to check what is the legal authority for doing certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know how this happened. But part of this, Sabrina, is a lack of proper training of people regarding their jobs. You remember last time when the current premier was in charge of financial services,
Yes.
finance or financial services, one or two.
Mm-hmm.
The service and then financial services, yeah. And then he announced that there was a proposal to increase certain fees relating to I think it was the savings institution, the credit union.
Mm-hmm.
And then people said, oh, how can you increase the fees? And then it became a whole big issue. And then it was questioned, well, how come he announced that this proposal was being made when it was still within the government legislative processes?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a number of MPs got up and said, well, you are not supposed to announce this before it is decided, because that's not the way to do it. And I know that is correct. When you are dealing with internal proposals at a certain time, you don't make them public. You don't say, for example, oh, we are taking this to cabinet next week now. Sometimes you can. But generally speaking, because the government deliberative processes are supposed to be internal, because you do not want, for example, something to go out there and cause undue alarm. You want government to decide when it goes to the public. For example, like if I'm drafting a piece of legislation, before it goes out to the public, even for consultation, it has got to go to cabinet, and cabinet has to say,
correct,
do we want to consult on the basis of this? And sometimes it can say, well, look, this bill is all right, but before we take it to the public, we want you to effect some changes, because we want to define better the basis upon which we are going to go and consult. Now, to me, I thought again that it just shows a lack of really knowledge of how the government processes work. And then part of this problem, why they have come back again to deal with these little things, is again because there's not enough skills on how to analyze a bill. If they had analyzed these bills, like if they had enough people in government who are trained to analyze a bill, these things would have come out earlier.
Let's look at it from a different perspective. What if it is not that the skill set is not there, but because there is an agenda to appear as though we're getting things done in a specific time frame, otherwise we're not going to be perceived as any different from those who may have come before. And then the rush is there, hence these unfortunate errors and multiple nuances now having to be cleaned up. I'm just being devil's advocate, benefit of doubt. What if that is the case, that it's not that there isn't sufficient knowledge and skill set, but there's a plethora of things. Remember the strategic policy statement. There's a lot of policies that some ministries, a lot of the ministries don't have, that's going to impact legislative change. People are crying because of the cost of living. We see where we're talking about the cost of healthcare, access in healthcare. It was a great demand for immigration reform. There's a lot that's going on. And you only have that legal department, right? It could be a plethora of things, not just the fact that there could be a lack of skill set. It could be a combination of things. But let's say the bottom line is that there's just so much that needs to be done. And the operational arm of government, the civil servants, have 4 years or 3 more years to make this current administration look good. And everybody wants something done It's just a lot on their plate, and time goes when you have to come. Maybe we may see a lot of these 7-7-2s saying we're going to waive public consultation, because that takes it out of the waiting time. You understand? Then you got to get the public feedback. Then that may actually evoke other amendments. So if you look at that, one piece of legislation can take all a year, if not longer.
Oh, yes. And you understand that, having been in the system. I understand that. And it's interesting that you should mention that, because at the end of the day, like a lot of things, this is something that is influenced not just by one thing. The lack of skills is one, but the other one is the one you have mentioned, which is the things that have to be done. You know, that there's a lot of competing and conflicting jobs that have to be done, and targets that have to be made. And you've now taken me out, Sabrina, into a broader area as to how are the legislative processes in government. Are they operating in a manner that is at an optimum level? Oh. This is something that I tried to work with when I was in government. I said, you know what? Some of the ways in which we do things are not very much saving of time. Let me start with some of the easiest things we need to do. I used to say, look, I can't, as a senior legislative counsel, be going by the copier and standing there for 30 minutes copying documents. I need somebody who can do that for me. Because if I was in the private sector, I probably would be earning, I don't know, let us imagine $600 an hour. And if I was charging somebody for that time, would I charge somebody $600 an hour for standing by the copier? No. Exactly. You know, so what I was trying to contribute to is to say, let us have legislative systems that actually work. Let me tell you how, for example, they work in England. Do you remember, by the way, before I talk about that, there used to be something you might remember which they used to send out, like it used to go out during Mr. McCarthy's time. It used to go out from Mr. McCarthy. Probably this time it was going out under the deputy governor, where they say, can you tell us the legislation that you want to be done next year? And this is like a circular letter. It goes out to every ministry, and the ministries, then they say, well, these are the pieces of legislation we want to do this year. Exactly. And then I remember that when that was done, and then it would be put in the throne speech, and the government says, well, this year my government wants to do this and that. The governor says, my government wants to do this and that, and so on. But you know what? That was never ever followed, because it was done every year, and then you put the legislation in the legislative program, but it was never followed. At the end of the year, half the legislation has not been done. You have not even established when the legislation is going to be done. I'll tell you what happened in Cayman. In Cayman, that system was copied from the bigger countries. Like in Canada, they send out from what is called a Privy Council office, they send out a call letter. It is a call to say, can you tell us what pieces of legislation need to be done? But what they do is that then there is a committee which sits on it, even before cabinet sits on it. There is a committee which sits on it. In the UK, it's called the PBL committee, Parliamentary Business and Legislation Committee. Those proposals go to that committee. Then they draw the program. They say, okay, fine. Who is going to, like, what are we going to do in the first quarter? Right. What are we going to do in the third quarter, and so on? And so they draw the program in that way. And then once they draw it in that way, the head of legislative drafting participates in that committee, because it's a committee of cabinet. And then they will say, okay, fine, you want the Proceeds of Crime bill to be introduced in Parliament by the 1st of October. Okay, very well. Now you draw a program regarding when the instructions are going to be given, when the first draft is going to be done, when further comments are going to be given, when it's going to be published in the Gazette. Now, I've only given you 4 or 5, but there are other milestones, like including public consultation and so on and so forth. So what you do is, therefore, you do it in such a way that it is spread out and everybody knows what you are supposed to meet. In fact, if it turns out that you are going to miss a milestone, You're supposed to warn a few people or to get additional help if you need it and so on. And that allows you to be able to do a piece of legislation with the least number of chances that you might miss a deadline or that you might wind up the way the premier has done. The problem in Cayman, and I can say this having worked as an insider in Cayman for 12 years, is that there's no program like that. People just tend to come to the legislative drafting department and say, oh, we want this to be done. I've had things, for example, somebody would come to me on the 1st of June and say, well, is it possible that we could introduce this in the 1st of August? It's just not possible. Okay? So you have to train people to understand how the system is supposed to work and then institute certain things to ensure that you are consulting sufficiently, you are spreading out everything, you are ensuring that lawyers who draft legislation are not spending time doing research on their
That's
own.
not going to bear fruit.
They should have they should have a sufficient support of paralegals, because sometimes as a lawyer and I'm writing a piece of legislation, I can be reading it and I say, okay, there are some transitional provisions here we have to deal with. And then I'll say, oh, I have to look up some case law. I have to be able to pick up the phone and tell a paralegal, get me some cases on transitional provision and retrospective legislation. Here are the cases that I have, and these are the concepts I want to be done. And then they support me. That way, I spend time more on dealing with the real important issues of writing the legislation rather than being my own support staff. Right. And a lot of these little things I had tried to introduce them in the to recommend them in the portfolio of legal affairs, but to tell you the very truth, the people there were not very innovative. Every time you said, well, can we just find a better way in which to stress test our legislation, they'll tell you, well, let us just buckle down and work. So that's how you have found that some of these problems like this, I'm not saying they are totally impossible, that they don't happen in bigger countries. Yeah. But they are minimized if your system is properly built. The legislative system in Cayman is not properly built at all. Okay? And they have resisted change, to just be able to sit down and say, okay, let us work the system so that it works the way it's supposed to work. They prefer really to tell you the truth, they prefer to keep people ignorant, because if they keep them ignorant, then when something like this happens, unless somebody like me comes out and talks about it, because, I know things having worked inside.
But here we go now, because you're talking about the operational arm of the portfolio legal affairs, that going from the bottom, from the top, I guess, put it from the perspective of MP needing a piece of legislation change done. They then work through their chief officer, along with their policy advisors, and they meet with stakeholders and all that sort of stuff to come together to say, these are the sections of the law, or this is the law that we need to amend because these are the outcomes. You get the blessings from your cabinet and caucus colleagues, and then off they go to the legal department and they do their magic, right? You as a minister, speaking from the minister's seat for the purpose of civic education, how it works. What I'm getting from you, having been someone worked in the department and a minister not getting involved in operational matters, but what I'm hearing from you, and I wouldn't be able to know whether or not better processes could possibly be explored in order for efficient at pace in that department. You understand what I'm saying? Because if it is a case where, let's say you have 12 people, 10 people, I don't know how much staff is in there, you have 8 ministries or 8 ministers needing multiple pieces of legislation that's going to change. And if you run it through, unless saved by exceptional circumstances, urgency, go through the whole consultation phase. Remember, there are amendments that are needed to various laws as well that may not be on the radar of a sitting administration that is more from the civil servant side. You understand? Then they're also in the lineup for I wonder if this administration would be inclined to do this because these are the benefits. Bearing in mind, you have the people's mandate that may require legislative change. Now you have to join in that queue. Not speaking on behalf or for, but I think what you are alluding to, in addition to skill set, possibly not knowing how the portfolio of legal affairs is structured, how they deal with case. Every 4 years, you got a new government, you got a new mandate. There may be hangover legislation that I know I left there. Thankful the minister is bringing some of them over the finish line, but maybe under this administration, they may actually see different changes that they want to make that takes it back to the drawing board again. You understand what I'm saying? So one of these was actually that amendment that was coming through. It was in discussion, but I didn't extrapolate just the definition. And amongst the pharmacy bill, the Health Insurance Act, and other bills, there were a number. There's about 5 or 6 pieces, if not more, of legislation that is just sitting there that was based on what I got back as a minister. We're waiting for the processes to be completed, and the time ran out. So if you understand what I'm saying, you got to be realistic as well for the 3 years that a government has. Yeah, you may have 4 years, but technically you have 2.5 years to really bring anything over. You understand? Yeah. I think the processes in that department has to be revisited in order to be able to produce, and people are not clamoring saying, I want this piece of law done. I want that piece of, I don't know how it works. It would be interesting to hear how it works from them. Yeah.
Yes. Now, talking about that, I remember when I had a business partner who's a Caymanian, and we were offering government to do legislation. This is after I left government, and we went to a ministry, a particular institution. I won't mention which one. Basically what we were doing is marketing ourselves, that since I had worked in the department there for a long time, we could write legislation which would be quickly finalized. And that particular entity was telling us that they had legislation waiting for 5 years, and that they had just spoken to the head of department in legal, and they said that even at 5 years, they couldn't fit that particular legislation in mind. So they were waiting 5 years already, and even at the end of 5, they were being told, we don't have enough time to do it. Now, I'll tell you part of some of the workings which are relevant to this. When I first came to Cayman, what used to happen is just any department could come in and say, draft a piece of legislation, and then we'll draft. At one point, I found that the number of pieces of legislation we were drafting, which were not eventually going to Parliament, was high. At one point, it was as much as half. Oh wow! Okay, so think about how much money is being wasted. You've drafted that piece of legislation; it hasn't gone anywhere after hours and hours and hours. And then I spoke to the head of department. I said, you know what? Why don't we try to keep a little bit of a statistic of how many pieces of legislation are enacted, like within the first 2 years or within the first 5 years, so that we can see exactly whether we are using our time properly. And then I also mentioned that
meeting the needs of the sitting administration, aka make ministers look as though they're doing something, especially if it's going to impact legislative change that can better serve nationally the Caymanian people.
Yeah, because what's the point if I've given you that example of legislation which at the end of 5 years hadn't been drafted? The chances are that it was proposed by a minister in the previous government, and then that minister probably wasn't in place anymore, as maybe in the opposition or in another ministry. That's the problem. The other thing that they used to do, so what I say to them, I said, look, anywhere in the Commonwealth, you do not draft legislation like that on demand. What you do is each ministry sits down and writes a cabinet paper and seeks what is called approval in principle. Yes. And approval in principle is simply you go to cabinet, you don't have a draft yet, but you've got ideas of what kind of legislation you need to pass, and then cabinet looks at it, and then it approves the main areas of policy. And then once it is approved, then that's when you get into the drafting process. Because everywhere in the Commonwealth they do it that way is because what if you go to the legislative drafting department, you draft it, and then you go to cabinet, then cabinet says we don't want this piece of
Change this,
legislation.
change
You
that.
have
Yeah,
wasted time.
yeah. That's the red
You,
line
you have
document
wasted.
that Central Minister MP from Central keeps saying, the markup document. So you can track the changes.
Exactly. So what happened was I found out when I brought that to their attention that they used to do that actually a long time ago in Cayman, but the system broke down. And then me and my friend from Trinidad, who had also a good knowledge of how the system works, finally we spoke to the Attorney General, and Mr. McCarthy issued a new circular to say, before you go to legislative drafting, seek cabinet approval in principle. Don't ask for a draft to be done. And then after, if cabinet approves, then that's when you give the instructions now for the legislation to be drafted. Now that alone really improved things, because then we were drafting, at least most of the legislation we were drafting was still was being enacted. The amount of waste was reduced. Now the other problem, for example, which delays things is. Like if you want to clear up a small point, like maybe it's a point of whether you need legislation or not. The problem at the moment is you have to write to the Attorney General,
Right.
and then the Attorney General goes to the Solicitor General, and then eventually it might come to legislative drafting if it's got to do with legislative drafting. Now, if you are going to write to the Attorney General for legal advice, that's the way it's supposed to be. But sometimes if it is a legislative issue, you might just want to, maybe a chief officer, you want to clear up some small legal point. I was also always being told, no, if a chief officer calls you to clear up a legal point, tell them to write a letter to the Attorney General. No. That's too much of a bottleneck.
Oh, wow.
In Australia, what they did was they said, look, we know that things have to go through certain channels.
Yeah.
But there are sometimes you want to clear up and obvious, sometimes you want to clear up just a small little thing. Okay. So what they did is they took their list of legislative counsel and they assigned them to different ministries. They said, look, if that ministry needs to clear up anything quickly, they can come directly to you without going to the Attorney General. However, if you think that it is a big matter of policy, then you can refer it upwards or ask them to write to the Attorney General. But if it is something that you can advise them very quickly, for example, if they want to say, oh, how do we give instructions for legislation? Then you say, okay, fine, go to our legislation handbook, it's on the website, and so on and so forth. And then you give it to them. So that way, some of those more obvious things can be dealt with quickly. I suggested that to the portfolio of legal affairs, they refused. So any little tiny thing you want to clear up has to go in writing, because everybody's been told don't talk to anybody.
Do you think it's the bureaucracy and red tape that everyone is making sure their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed, and at the end of the day we're not getting anything done because everything requires a paper trail? And it sometimes for what you're describing and for what little experience I do have sitting in a position, it's as though, and I for those of you who worked very close with me, they will understand. I was infamous for using this line. It's like you're scared of your own shadow. Has it gotten to the point where it is quite nerve-wracking when you have some civil servants that are being called to on the floor of Parliament, be it in Finance Committee, PAC, to actually explain, and the responsibilities, of course, they have to explain and justify from the operational side of things. So maybe is it maybe some of the fares that we're seeing and why so much red tape that is actually hindering production progress is because of lack thereof of lawsuits or being loss of job that is ultimately holding back people, holding back progress then, because of being being so careful, that you got all of these hoops and hurdles to go through, yet people are out here struggling and we can't get bills through fast enough. That's just a general question.
It's for me, yes, that is a legitimate problem. For me, it just goes back to training, because I worked with chief officers. There are some chief officers, and the chief officers in the Cayman Islands are some of the most educated you can find anywhere. But even those, I could see they had no training on how to work on legislation. For example, sometimes they would just come to you, they say, okay, cabinet has passed they've approved this bill.
Mm-hmm.
The policy has been approved. Here are the cabinet minutes, the cabinet extracts for you to draft something. Draft something for us. You should never do that. Because generally speaking, you can't draft you can't give instructions to draft legislation purely on the basis of a cabinet extract. There's not enough detail.
Yeah.
What you are supposed to do is
policy advisor with and support or in the presence of your chief officer, who's then conveying the intent or the context behind what is the basis behind this request should be there or all tied into a meeting. Yeah.
Exactly, and then because then once cabinet is approved in principle, there's a cabinet approval in principle. For example, cabinet might say, okay, you want to create an institution that will, I don't know, look into cultural affairs. Okay, fine. How do you plan to have it structured? Then you say, okay, we want it to be a corporate body. We want it to have a board of directors and so on and so forth. You give them the basics and so forth, and then they'll say, okay, fine. I think this body is good, but then you go down now. You sit down and work out what will be the composition of the body, what will be the specific functions, what will be the powers it will have of inspection, how will they be appointed, and so on.
Yeah.
Because those details would not always be in the cabinet paper which seeks approval. Yeah, exactly. So you are supposed to do that. But when you go to a drafter and you say, draft something on the basis of a cabinet extract, I'll tell you what, a lot of drafters will not complain. You know why? Because you have given them a lot of power. You have given them a lot of power because you've just come in with a general proposal. They will decide what has to go in, and they will frame the legislation in a way that suits them. And then when it comes to you, you look at it. When you look at it, there will be some things which will not occur to you. But once they have framed the discussion, then you are just looking at what they've put in. And I will tell you, one time I was in Hong Kong, 2009, thereabouts. There's this British guy who writes legislation, but he worked in Grenada for the British government for about 2 years. And he was saying, you know what? If they don't give me a proposal and I put the proposal in the legislation, the chances are that even if it's not good, it will pass.
Oh, wow.
It will pass. So what I used to do with people is I remember one time one ministry, I won't mention what ministry it was. When they came to me, they wanted to have this piece of legislation. That legislation was eventually passed. And then I told them, I said, okay, you know what? You haven't given me enough to work on, but let me give you this piece of legislation, that piece of legislation. These are the ones that are similar to what you want. Go through them. Tell me that you would like a provision that looks like this and like that and so on and so forth. And then once you give me that general idea, then I can start working on something. You know what the ministry did?
Well,
they fought me. They said, no, you are being difficult. Why don't you just write something?
But hold on, you are I totally get where you're going, and I'm hoping, even though we kind of digressed from the whole culture of silent, because your question that you brought, and I could hear the emptiness and the disappointment in your voice yesterday when you said, you've created a space, you've laid a foundation based on taking some jabs. Why don't the people speak up? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that is what brought this topic today. But exactly what you said just now is the reason why we have probably found ourselves in this position right now, where you are given an opportunity to just put a little bit more elbow grease into things, and the responsibility of the reflection of the people's wants and desires requires everybody to actually perform at the same level in helping everybody to reach one common goal. But if it's because just you're a legal drafter, you come up with something, how do you know what discussions, unless you're sitting in on those policy meetings to hear the wishes, the desires of the minister in the presence of your senior policy advisors and your chief officers, to know you who's down in the legal affairs department requested now to do this piece of legislation is going to really reflect the acts of the minister, hoping that is the reflection of the people. It not making no sense.
You see, Sabrina, that's why when me and my Cayman partner, we were trying to sell we're trying to sell in the sense of to get people to do our courses, the 9 courses that I designed. But when we were selling the particular course relating to the legislative process and judicial review, we were saying, once you learn the legislative process, you learn what your job is and what the drafter's job is, and how drafters think, and how certain things written in a certain way can appear simple, but some implied rules of interpretation or rules of judicial review will actually give them an effect that you might not imagine.
Exactly.
We sold it by, we were telling them to say, this will allow you, once you do these courses, they will allow you to have greater control on the content of legislation. And I think that the powers that be, that's what they didn't want, because the powers that be didn't want people in government to be able to look at legislation and really be in control of it. They wanted more like them to continue this practice where they take a cabinet extract and give it to the drafter, and then the drafter does whatever it is they want to do.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Let me give you an example. For example, some of the problems we used to have is, like the government, people come in and they say, well, this particular offense is very, very serious. We want this offense to carry minimum 10 years imprisonment. And then I'll tell them, okay, the sentence is a matter of policy. But just to let you know, most offenses of this kind don't carry 10 years. So when you go to the House and you pass this piece of legislation, then there will be a certain incongruity, if there's such a word, in the legislation. Yeah, because they will say, why is it that similar offenses, some are carrying minimum 10 years, others don't have a minimum? So what we would do is we would advise to say, no, why don't we give a sentence which is similar to the other sentences? But the problem then, you'll find the client ministry says, no, but this is what the minister wants. And the reason I give that example is that it is not quite, it's a mixed legal and policy question, okay? It's a policy question to the extent that the sentence really government should decide, but it's a legal question to the extent that I'm trying to tell you that if you want a statute book that makes sense and is coherent and consistent within itself, you can't have similar offenses, one carrying 10 years and so forth. But you see, all these issues are things that once the department knows what their job is, you know what my job is, we can get along better. A lot of times when I used to ask people to give me further information, they thought I was being difficult. There's another example I think I gave you probably some time back. Somebody called me up and said, okay, cabinet has decided that we are going to do this. I remember the piece of legislation, but I won't give you the details. And then I said, well, can you tell me the policy reason behind this? And the chief officer there said, why are you asking me the policy reason? You are just a drafter. You are just supposed to write. You are now behaving like an advocate for certain particular ideas. I said, no. The only reason I'm asking you is that, you see, there could be a constitutional point here. Because if your policy reason is such that it cannot be recognized as a legitimate derogation under the Constitution, this may be found to be unconstitutional, but just tell me what the reason is. Then eventually they told me what the reason was, and I said, okay, that's a good reason, because that is an exception to this particular fundamental human right. Do you see? I was trying to be helpful to them, but they thought I was being difficult. Okay, so these are the things, Sabrina. I just think that in Cayman, there is need to work on the systems, on the training, on to ensure that there's optimum support for people who work in government, greater knowledge on the part of chief officers and other people who support them. If that is done, this kind of embarrassing thing will be minimized. But at the end of the day, we'll see.
Balika, how long will it take to complete one of your courses? You see, this was unsolicited, but people asking.
Well, at least nobody will say that you are a lawyer and you're advertising. I'm just answering a question now. So, you see. At least I'm just answering a question. It is the person who has asked. You see, the courses are there are one-day courses and half-day courses. The 1 day courses are 6 hours. The half-day courses are more like 3 hours. Now, when we taught them in the past, we taught them like in one day. We had them at the Courtyard Marriott,
Mm-hmm.
And it was one day. But one thing that I found since then, there are some people who can't come in to sit one day. So I'm hoping that if I find a new partner, we could have people have an option, which like UCCI is doing, where it's a course. It might be a one-day course, but you break it up maybe into 6 so that people come in on a Thursday and so forth. And then that might be able to work. And if we can do it online also, that would be nice. So, but the answer to the question, therefore, is that they take anywhere from 3 hours to 6 hours. They are all one-day or half-day courses. But at the moment, they are not offered anywhere because I don't have a partner. We tend to, the way we did it with my last partner was she had a company. I won't mention the name because she has moved on. She's doing something else now. She had a little company which she put together. So that company advertised for the courses, and people signed up. And then when they finished the courses, on the same day, we would give them a certificate signed by me as the facilitator. And then and her as the managing director of the company, and we did that. The last one that I did was for planning. I normally don't like having more than 20 people, but that particular one, there were so many people who wanted to sign the legislative process. It was 25 people, and at that time, because I was still feeling very good, I also gave them a copy of a free copy of my book, my green book on the Cayman legislative process. So that's the answer to that. And then
hold on a minute. I want to interrupt you for a little bit because you may want to weigh in on this. Just actually shared to me by a number of persons. It's a link and it's an article that must be just went live thanks to Cayman News Service. And I'm going to, please bear with me. I'm going to read it so that you can digest. Okay, because it's just hitting the tubes right now. There we go. You may wonder what the heck that is. Questions continue to mount over the government's reported purchase of One Capitol Place, a major commercial office building in the center of Georgetown. The acquisition, first highlighted by Cayman News Service, has raised concerns about transparency, public spending, and the government's refusal to explain the move. One Capitol Place is owned by NCB, a developer currently facing multiple lawsuits and ongoing financial strain. Their long-stalled hotel project on Georgetown waterfront remains unfinished and no clear timeline for resumption. Despite these challenges, the government has reportedly acquired the fully leased building and has offered no explanation to why taxpayer dollars were used to purchase a property that cannot be occupied by government departments. According to NCB own information, the building is 100% leased with 7 tenants occupying all 4 floors and roughly 50,000 square feet of office space. That raises critical question. Why buy a building the government cannot use? The government offices have outgrown the accommodation building on Elgin Avenue and additional space is needed. But typically, that would mean purchasing a vacant property that can be adapted quickly for public use. Instead, the public is left wondering whether this purchase was a strategic investment to bail out for a struggling developer or something else entirely. CNS submitted questions to the National Coalition for Caymanians, but officials say they will not respond until after upcoming parliamentary meeting. NCB has also been contacted and a response is still pending. For now, Caymanians remain in the dark. There has been no confirmation of the purchase price, no explanation to the government's intentions, and no assurance that the deal represents value for money. When public funds are involved, silence is not an acceptable answer. Caymanians deserve clarity, accountability, and full disclosure. This is an article that just went up and was shared with me by a number of persons, so I felt it was warranted. What's your take on this? And again, what's the take on this?
Yeah, well, government, as you know, have got some procedures. There's a piece of legislation, I forget the actual title of it. It's for government acquisitions, the one that regulates how you buy, sell things. and how like you send in bids for the buying or purchase of things, the first thing would be I would expect government to say whether the tender procedures were followed. Okay? Because I remember some time back, the Attorney General himself used to give out legal work, and the question was asked, why are you giving out legal work without following tender procedures? And the answer which was given by the Solicitor General in Parliament at the time was, well, you see, the reason that we don't send out tenders is because we like to work with the lawyers who we've worked with before. Now, that answer is a terrible answer. So we can all break the law. If we've got a good reason for breaking it, we can say, well, we don't want to take it for tender in case the person who wins the tender is somebody else. So we'll keep working with somebody who we've worked with before because we like them. Even if maybe they might not be the best, maybe they are not the cheapest or the most reasonably priced. So the first thing to me is, were tender procedures followed? By the way, I did make an FOI some time back for them to for the Attorney General, for example, to tell me how much money they had paid the lawyer who was handling my case. And you know what the Attorney General said? I'm digressing a little bit here, but it's in the same ballpark. The Attorney General said there was no contract with that particular lawyer. So I said, no, but you can't engage somebody on a government business without a contract. In fact, under sections 5 or 6 of the National Archives and Public Records Law, it says that every public agency must keep a record of its affairs. So if you can engage a lawyer who can go to the Grand Court, go to the Court of Appeal, and then you tell me there was nothing written down, you are not just breaking the professional rules of conduct, which say there must be a retainer agreement. You are also breaking specific laws of the Cayman Islands, which require government agencies to write down what their affairs are. So for me to go back to the issue of this one capital place, government is obligated, first of all, to state to the public whether they followed tender procedures. And if they followed tender procedures and the particular, then they decided to buy this particular place, they should say why they bought it. Because there are some obvious questions, I mean, how do you buy something which is not like fully usable? There are some questions about it.
Well, there is no denying that government administration building is busting at the seams and that they need a new place. Yes. But if based on the article, which I shared the link, that it's fully occupied, then I don't know. We'll leave it for the government to explain why. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Well, like you were saying yesterday, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean that because you do not have room in the government there, then you can just go out and purchase an old building. And you must remember that, you see, when you buy a building, value has gone from the government to buying that building. Now, the lawyers sometimes can work it out in such a way that during the conveyancing of the building, the assignment of the building, they might have a clause there which says from a certain date, like the date of purchase, that the rent which is derived from that building goes to the government. Those kinds.
So that would, but we're speculating now because this is breaking. We saw where they report that there is no. They reached out to the government, but nothing was forthcoming until after Parliament. Again, and this is why people are saying, where is the transparency? Where is, I don't know. So I'm not going to push this. It's shared with me by a number of persons, this link, and that's why I shared it there. It's not me saying it, it's there. But I'm quite sure when it makes headlines like this, probably a lot of people on the road already knew it, but why should it be shoo? It's the people's money.
Exactly.
This is where people get so really you're creating the space for people to put a narrative into it instead of just being upfront from the beginning when it was being done to just shut it down, control the narrative.
Exactly. You know, when I was writing the Freedom of Information Law way back when Mr. Tibbetts was leader of government business. Because when he was in the opposition, it was his project. He wanted FOI law to Cayman. So I was privileged to be assigned that and worked very closely with him and his team. And I remember when the expert from the UK came in to talk about that, because I was dealing with the legal and drafting side, but there was an expert in access to public information who came in from the UK. And what she said was, you know what? Freedom of information is a new thing, and you need to understand exactly how it's supposed to work. You are not, in fact, supposed to wait until people ask things. You should proactively reveal information. Okay? Proactively reveal it. If, for example, it is minutes of meetings and so on, you don't wait until people ask you for the minutes. You reveal that information. There's a lot of stuff that you should reveal proactively. If you are going to be asked, let it be something maybe which you didn't find it necessary to be proactively released. And that's what you are saying, Sabrina. In this particular case, the questions are being asked. Why? Because there are certain things which look they might not be right. And in talking about how lawyers arrange for assignments, I'm also trying to be fair to say, well, it is occupied, but maybe the government might have made some arrangements to ensure that from the time they pay for it, the rentals from the people who are in that building maybe is going to government. So maybe government is not losing anything, okay? So we are just trying to look at both sides here, but I think that the point to be made is government must explain these things proactively so that people are not forced to start
assuming
things, assuming one way or the other that it was done badly or it was done well. Always, keep the channels, going, and then you'll be okay.
Or is it a case that you actually highlighted yesterday, 9-day talk? The people are just going to talk for 9 days. A couple of people will get and shout on certain platforms. They will try to make a big thing, but it'll die down. And then so what? On to business as usual. You understand? Do you understand what 9-day talk almost? It's almost a disservice to the people.
I understand. Yeah, you do not want to get in the society to a point where the government feels that if we can just hold on to it, they'll stop talking and then we'll get away with it. No. Government must understand that if they do something wrong like that, people are going to talk about it and that it won't go away until it is corrected.
But then the culture is you don't have, again, and it goes back to the principle of what we're saying, only 2 or 3 persons will speak out about it, but then what? Who holds them accountable for doing this, or by perception based on what I'm getting? How can they do this? Why would they withhold the information? Why not? Who cares if they're going, maybe they said they're going to, that article, that newspaper company, they said, okay, we're going to deal with it after Parliament, because maybe they're planning on making a big announcement at the opening of this next sitting tomorrow. Who knows? Again,
yes, and you never know. Maybe
the narrative.
Control the narrative. You sometimes you even give a holding response, and you might even say you say, okay, you know what? We have bought this building. We will give government, we'll give the people a full briefing about this. But for now, we'll tell you that we think it is a very good deal, but we can't give you the details now. We are preparing them.
Stay tuned. Because we will come back to you.
We'll come back to you, and then you go to the house or wherever, press conference, whatever it is, and then you give the details. Control the narrative, as you say.
But what do you say to people then who's saying, "Oh, we're being imposed all of these fees, or all of these fees being imposed, yada yada yada, that's been delayed? Is that now supposed to pay for this building?" And people are struggling. You are creating this area, this environment for people to think back of how they're struggling. You understand? And here we have this breaking news now from a reputable source, and people are like, what the heck?
Yeah. You see, it's like we were talking about yesterday. When people are going through one thing and you ask them not to feel. You remember that thing we were talking about immigration, where we were saying, well, look, you are asking Caymanians to be understanding about the guy who loses his PR when they are losing their birthright. This is similar to this. They are also saying that, well, the people there might be saying, okay, you appear to be wasting time. after you are increasing the fees, we are going to have to pay more. What the hell is going on? You see, once you look at things because people live lives which have got different aspects. They pay money to government, they pay money for schools, they have to do groceries, so that when they see the struggles that they are having, and then they look out there, it appears that government might be wasting money. That is an explanation they want straight away. They don't want to have to wait too long. And that's how you govern, really, because you govern according to, you see, communication is part of governance. There was a little something on yes Prime Minister where Sir Arnold said they asked him about freedom of information. He said, look, you can't have freedom of information and government, because you have to choose whether you have freedom of information or government. The two are mutually exclusive. Now, of course, that was a joke. But what you want actually is the exact opposite. The way you govern properly is when you communicate with people. When you communicate with people, sometimes they are just happy that you've respected them and addressed the issue. Say, look, we understand this. We'll give you the details later. But we know that you've got a right to receive this information, but we have to put it together. Now that the deal is over, that work is finished. Now the work of accounting to you, we'll let you know in good time. And you'll find people, usually, if you tell them that, they say, okay, let's wait, so long as they don't wait too long. Accountability. You see, the problem in Cayman is, well, look, in Cayman we can criticize Cayman because every society has been criticized. Okay, there are some countries where things are really tough, but even in Cayman, I think issues about not just accountability in general, but also the rule of law is very, very important. And talking about the rule of law, I don't want to speak too much about my case. Huh? The rule of law, 23rd and 24th March has been fixed by the ad hoc judges of the Court of Appeal, the three of them, who are from England. They will hear my case. This is the case which I have sued Chief Justice Ramsey Hale, President of the Court of Appeal, John Goldring, Mr. Nick Freeland, Mr. Adrian Saunders, who is Chief Justice of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Dame Janice Pereira, somebody who I actually know from the BVI, who is President of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, as well as the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal. These are all the members of the Judicial and Legal Commission. I have sued them for failing to discipline a judge. And I urge people to keep that date, 23rd to 24th of March. It was just double confirmed today. We'll be filing the bundles by the 6th. That case, people should, even if you've never had a problem with the courts of law, I suggest that you keep your eyes open for it. I'll try to see if I can inform the public about the courtroom where it will be held, because the judges will be sitting in the UK, right? And I am out where I am, and it has been set for 2 days. And they've hired a QC from the UK as well, who will also be sitting there, and then there will be the lawyers from the AG's chambers. Because to me, what has happened in the Cayman Islands is that the judiciary, in my view, this is my personal opinion, has run amok. A lot of people are suffering there, and when you complain against a judge, there is no disciplining of a judge. And the case that I had is a cut and dry case. A judge lied. I had 13 emails to show that he lied, and yet all these judges, it has gone, this case, Sabrina, now to about 10 judges, because I even applied to the Privy Council for leave to appeal. And they told me that you've got no arguable point of law. I could never believe that with all the evidence I had no arguable point of law. Then I brought it back to the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, because you can only complain against a judge after the appeal process has been exhausted. So after it was exhausted, I brought it back to them. This is again for the information of the public as well. And then when you go to the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, they are supposed to now hear the matter and decide it. It had been recommended by a certain KC who was engaged by the court's administrator. It was recommended that my case should be heard in an oral hearing. that there should be witnesses called and so on because how strong it was. The Judicial Commission never held an oral hearing, never quoted my emails. And so we and then the important thing as well, I wrote to the governor and I said, Governor, I do not want anybody in the current Court of Appeal, either those who heard the case before, even those who are just on the Court of Appeal, even if they never touched it. So long as they are full-time engaged long-term to the Court of Appeal, I do not want them to hear my matter. Mm-hmm. And the governor accepted it and therefore appointed this special judge. Correct. From there, I share that. So 23rd to the 24th, we'll see. I know people, for example, in Cayman who have they've lost cases, and then there are no records in the court there. Somebody called me a few weeks ago saying, look, can you help me? Because they are also going through just about the same thing that I've been going through. But anyway, that's the case. We'll see what happens about that. But the point is there must be a better rule of law observance in the Cayman Islands. The culture must continue to be built that at the end of the day, the government, including the official office, the chief officers and all, they serve the government and they should act in accordance with law. There we go. I will let you go. I'll let you go, Sabrina. Thank you very much for the time.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes. Yeah. We've gotten some, thank you, caller, for that. Thank you for his contribution and very full discussion and full dialogue today. We want to thank him for weighing in on it. And yes, I have gotten this link numerous of times in regards to this that I interrupted. And for those of you who just tuning in, the government has now purchased this property, and the link is below that shows you, thanks to C Compliments of Cayman News Service, that the link has been shared with me. And what is your take on this? You know, it is one of the things that has sparked the conversation today, that you know, some people did voice their disappointment, that they're getting more and more disappointed. And yesterday we said on this platform that, you know, people are feeling fatigued. They're getting frustrated because they're like, how much more can I take on my head? Just leave it, let the governments take it. You may have heard Denny have said that numerous of times over and over on this platform, that you got to be you can't just sit down and say, oh, that's what I vote you in for. You got to do it. But what is your take on situations like this? So, hey, I'm quite sure the government will give a justification. There is no untruth about whether or not the civil service has outgrown the government administration building. But then the question still lies, what are they doing with the government administration building, glass house? You know, and all of these things. So who's to tell? We have to wait until more of this comes out. But again, control the narrative. Hint, hint. There's a coded message in there to who needs to hear it. Control the narrative. Don't take things for granted. Everything now is the power and speed and pace need to be improved. Otherwise, it's going to be one's demise. And I feel it is very important that you don't take certain things for granted, because now you have a society that is becoming more informed. They have woken up. They are listening. They're going and they're researching. And if you do not get in the front of certain things, the narrative will be filled by whatever is out there. And then it looks as though you're scraping you know what from the ceiling. So I am encouraging my friends to control the narrative. Look at these things a little bit differently, and definitely you want to act on them much quicker. But what's your take on it? The phone lines are wide open, WhatsApp or call in 936-8255. And also I saw where I always like to share good stuff. It's not only, you know, stuff that makes you go, what? I want to share along with my CMR family here and highlight and showcase our people, because I notice now this is something that it looks as though the DVDL, the DMV, is actually doing. And I hope that you can share the love. This actual will do a lot to their morale for their staff. And let us share from all of us here at Sabrina Speaks family, share and give a big shout out to Josh for providing efficient customer service with a smile. And anyone who has visited the DVDL knows the lines can sometimes be long and the days can be stressful. But Josh, it is known to continue to serve the public with professionalism, patience, and a positive attitude. And it's always refreshing to see public servants who take pride in their work and treat people with kindness. So we appreciate those who go the extra mile for the community. So this is a public appeal. If you know someone who's deserving of this recognition, yes, you can nominate the next MVP of the day by sending a message or WhatsApp to 324-1612, and let's make somebody's day. So yeah, I will also share that there, the WhatsApp. Let me cut and paste this. The WhatsApp number for the MVP of the day. So how you nominate someone for the MVP of the day is that you send a WhatsApp, quick, to 324-1612, and I will paste that up here so you can put a smile and somebody say, who to tell? He may get nominated for the Deputy Governor's Award. So yeah, and your feedback and help. So yeah, congratulations, Josh, from all of us here at Sabrina Speaks. Thanks to the CMR crew for definitely helping us shed a light on that. And we're going to do this for Josh. And we're going to expect some more persons taking advantage of that WhatsApp. And as we share, Josh, we get a different picture of Josh now. So I'm hoping they're going to do a whole PR splits on him so we can get a little interview with him. And I don't know where it's going to go. Who to tell? But let's celebrate the good stuff. Because there's good, but everything that's happening in the world, we want to showcase those around us as well. So yeah, interesting things that are going on. And like I said, gentle reminder, Parliament does start tomorrow. The fourth meeting of the 2025-2026 session of Parliament will take place tomorrow at 2:00. And you can follow that live on CIG YouTube channel and the CIG TV on cable. So whatever means you want to do to go through this and get that, we encourage you to tune in and definitely keep in the know. I will do my best as well here to make sure that in between everything that I'm doing, to listen in as best as I can and try to give a synopsis of exactly the happenings. But I am going to end a little earlier this evening because I got somewhere to be at. But I want to thank you all for joining me for another episode of Sabrina Speaks. It has been a pleasure. Thank our caller for coming on. Thank you as well for your messages and for remaining and continuously engaging. Thank you for the kind compliments as well. And I know I posted these on the screen, but this was in regards, Damien posted this in regards to bailing out their friend with hiding motives and blindfolding the public, smoke and mirrors. Well, maybe you can take this up tomorrow. Weigh in on it. Maybe the shock is just setting in. And Tartarian is saying, is it that they need a place for the opposition and more space? Just wondering. Let's wait to see. So this is just coming out. So this is new. And you can find more. Go on to Cayman News Service. I'm quite sure CMR platform too, as this becomes more and more known, will also follow it through. So let's see. What about if you apply for a job as a Caymanian, I'm thinking, and they told you that you are overqualified? Apparently, Jamie, that is something that is often heard. And, telling you that you're overqualified and then they put to me, that should be a bargaining tool, something that is negotiable. And if you're overqualified, it probably means that the position that you applied for is outdoing your qualifications to the point that they feel, especially if it's a position that they're looking for stability and long term, that they may feel you may not give them stability. I don't know. I'm not speaking on behalf of any company. But maybe that may be the reason, whether or not you're probably maybe looked at as just a gap filler for yourself and not necessarily long-term growth of that organization. So to say or use the possible excuse that you are overqualified is an indirect way of saying, I'm not going to employ you. You're overqualified. Why would you apply for a medial job? You're not going to last. You're just using me as a stepping stone. Maybe that's the perspective, but I'm hearing, Jamie, that is definitely something that has been often spoken about. And a lot of Caymanians are not given an opportunity in certain positions, even if they decide to take a lower paying position, and in time comes that they can climb up the ranks with succession planning. It isn't like their qualifications and skill sets is not already known. And once the position becomes available, hopefully they will be given an opportunity for upward mobility. So I would love to hear this more from a broader perspective from the human resources persons out there, because you have heard us say it on this platform here before, that the dynamics and the environment of HR is changing, has changed the culture, even in our society, begs the question. And unless the human resources specialists actually come out and give an overall true explanation as really what the environment is like, to dispel some of what could be appeared as a myth or might actually prove reality, speculations will remain, Jamie. And this goes back to the article, control the narrative. Where is the Human Resources Association, or even challenge it with their partners, the Chamber of Commerce, to kind of zoom in on this, to clear the air? It could be a collaborative approach, that people don't feel that they're only getting this decision because that's another way of keeping them out of the workforce. Who's to tell? We create the space. We've opened the door. Thank you for bringing up this topic. And I hope that kind of gives you a prescription, some sort of a description of, or a reason as to why that could be the case. But the experts need to really answer that, and in that industry. Again, this has brought me to the close of today's episode of Sabrina Speaks. I want to thank you all for joining me. I want to thank you all for sticking and staying with me. I want to thank all of our new followers and subscribers. And also, if you're having any issues with Facebook, while I was live, I did get a pop-up that there are some Facebook users. The website is giving some issues. So don't be angry of your provider. It could be a plethora of things that's going on as well with Facebook. FYI, that came in while we were live. So be careful, be wary of that. As it comes to us, I share it with you. I want to tell you all to be safe. All of our persons out there on the front lines, thank you for your service. God bless. Take care. Love you lots. See you tomorrow.
That's a wrap for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the conversation. Remember, the dialogue doesn't stop here. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay empowered. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., same time, same place, right here on CMR TV and radio, where your voice matters and your truth is heard. Until then, Cayman, take care of yourself and each other.
That's it for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks, where your voice matters, your story counts, and your truth is always welcome. Join us weekdays from 5 until 6:30 p.m. right here on CMR TV as we dive into the topics that matter most to you. Catch the show live or on demand at cmrtv.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so you never miss a moment. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and always speak your truth.